Time for some Type 40, extra Type 40 video exclusive content with me, Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. Welcome back to the channel. This is where we scroll the view screen for the sights and sounds of the Whoniverse, those fixed and not so fixed of talking points on this before show, after show, and in between show, to everything we do on the live streams and the podcasts and everything that goes on at Type 40. I do have company for another Christmas edition of the show. Well, this one is a little bit of a coup because I have with me the person behind a very particular social media account. You've probably seen it if you use Instagram or X, in fact, because some of the imagery is like nothing I've ever seen before. So what a build-up that is. I'm talking about Doctor Who and the Midjourney. And the bio says that this account is exploring the Doctor Who books and audios through the AI of Midjourney. It's an enigmatic Instagram and X account. It's been delighting followers now for a couple of years. And I've got the human being responsible for it all here with me on the show. Welcome to Type 40 Extra, MJ.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. Hello.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Yes, so Doctor Who and the Midjourney, how evocative is that? It sounds like a Target book that we never got or that we might get now in the 21st century, which I think does speak to a lot of the imagery that's coming out of this account. But it's a very popular account, isn't it? You've been doing this for about 2 years. Why social media?
Why? I mean, no, it's just fun to get out there. The actual account started because I was learning Midjourney just as part of my job. Really, I was investigating, looking into it, see how we could use it. You know, I do a lot of 3D modeling and things like that. If your viewers don't know what Midjourney is, it's an AI that creates imagery. So you type a prompt and an image comes out of it, right? Just to clarify, I'm mansplaining to everybody. But so I basically wanted a little outlet where I could develop my prompting skills, learn how to use the new tools. And I thought actually the sort of history of the Doctor Who books, the extended universe, some people might call it, was very rich in concepts, amazing concepts, some of it which had reference material to sort of riff on. And I thought that's a fun idea to try and hone skills, go through the books of just things that I remembered and trying to sort of visualize them and bring them to life in a sort of new series-y way. And actually, you know, having an audience through Twitter and then Instagram and the rest, Blue Sky also these days, is really good because even though some of them are extremely critical, you know, a bit of feedback and a bit of direction and sometimes some praise goes a long way. And it's been rolling along through the years, basically just me. Sometimes I live do them as I'm reading books. Sometimes an image pops in my head of just something that we're thinking about on Twitter that day, you know. So yeah, that's how the account started and just rolled ahead.
Critical Doctor Who fans, are you sure?
Yeah, but you know, sometimes it's useful criticism. You know, it's certainly honed my eye over the years to look for things people are going to spot. I still let a few slip through, but it's quite good.
See, I wasn't sure what Midjourney actually was or is. I've heard of OpenAI. I've heard of Grok, which is sort of built in to X, isn't it? And all of those things are starting to turn up here and there. AI is starting to make news in a way that affects people's day-to-day lives, or in a way in which they can access it and sort of play with it a little. But generally speaking, it still has that kind of Skynet feel where people are a little bit scared of it. But you don't seem remotely scared by AI at all. It seems to have freed you.
No, it's I'm not sure I agree with you there. I definitely feel it's a scary prospect, the sort of wider implications of AI. I mean, so I started to look at it after initially being a bit dismissive, I should say, because, you know, as I say, so part of my work, I do sort of exhibition design, pavilion design, experience design, and a lot of that is communicating sort of ideas through visuals and presentations, you know, and generating imagery, 3D models. So to have this sort of appear, you know, it was part of my job to start investigating into it and throw myself into it, you know, and that's very much a part of what's happened here.
Because it has sort of taken over where something like CAD would have been 15, 20 years ago, hasn't it? Sort of evolved from that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of CAD work in my time, definitely. I mean, you're still this, well, you know, in the sort of built environment, and we're talking the detail element of my actual job here, you know, sort of an architectural background. There's still a lot of manual CAD work and draftsmanship through actual CAD, but 3D modeling, I mean, no, it's still out there. It's just, it's almost going to affect every job, you know, just like every job became a sort of software job. A lot of jobs that have become AI jobs where you're sort of working with an AI, and, you know, there'll be a lot of inventiveness. There'll be a lot of sort of extra creativity, I think, as there already is. But yeah, no, it is quite frightening. Yeah, because we're obviously entering a new epoch, aren't we, in a way? There'll be great periods of trouble for society as we sort of enter that new world, really. I mean,
teething troubles, you mean, or
teething troubles for
deeper,
society? I don't know.
problems.
Oh, well, I mean, you know, because like all automation, when you look at, you know, the early 20th century, there was a lot of automation there, and the sort of the world changed, you know, and we'll just go through another world, whether it be a better world or not. I couldn't tell you. I'm not a futurologist.
You can't, or you won't. You will be held to every single word of this, MJ, as time goes on. I think that there is a romance, an inherent romance to Doctor Who anyway, tied to childhood, tied to old school heroism, I think, as well. And a lot of your imagery, the things that you create, I think tap into that, a kind of classical feel.
They're they're very personal. Yeah, I've been thinking about the conversations that we might have on this chat a bit. And, you know, they're all, if you look at all the subjects, they're all actually kind of, they're all just from my personal history of reading the show, really, and encountering the show and my own nostalgia. And also I suppose, the way that I feel we were robbed in the 90s, right? And there's an element of that to it, as well as a wilderness child, you know. So yeah.
I did wonder where that came into it, because you pick up on there's a lot of the things that you put out, particularly when you set them to music and make them move, which have a kind of longing about them, as if you.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Really
For that which we didn't get.
Yeah. No, definitely. You know, you look at these things, and sometimes I wonder whether to make them explicitly sort of 90s, you know, make them look like Red Dwarf and things like that.
Yeah.
To give them, I mean, that might come. Maybe I'll get around to that. But yeah, no, it's all about, I think, that sort of the nostalgia for something that didn't exist or that you've not ever seen. I think Doctor Who fans have a lot of that, right? With the missing episodes and things, there's always
most Doctor Who fans now have that, I think, because the series having existed for 6 decades, and obviously that original generation of children are now a retirement age, and sadly some of them are no longer with us. You know, the very first Doctor Who fan was part of our show. You know, a guy called Ian McLaughlin did several shows with us, and he was well into his 70s, and you think, well, okay, so now there's a bulk of people will always have come along after it started, and will always be playing catch up, even though we can go and watch the stories, MJ, and we can simulate what it must have been like for them to see them when they were new, because they're not new, they're part of a broader culture, which we're also tapping into at the same. We access it later, and you can't detach the material. Something like Inferno or The Mind Robber, or I don't know, or even something like the Space Museum. You can't detach that stuff from where it's placed in the broader history. You know, so it'll always be different for us coming afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. But, you know, I really enjoy the fact that at the moment, the current series, or maybe even just Russell T Davies, has a real interest in sort of reframing the classic series and editing it and sort of colorizing it and presenting it anew to new fans. I think that's great. It's very confident to actually reach back into 60-year-old material and try and interest Gen Z into it. I think that's great, and I think there'll be a lot more of that in the future as well.
It is confident. I mean, some see it as a recklessness. I don't view it that way at all. I think that the material is very, very strong, and it stands up to this kind of the treatment, whether it's omnibus editions, whether it's new special effects, whether it's colorization, all these various things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the projects I'd like to move on to next with this account is to look at taking old series classic clips and really pushing the limits of what you could actually do with them. And as we go forward, as sort of AI exponentially gets better and better and weirder, I think we'll see a lot of that, where you sort of get video to video, like upscaled and relit, and never mind recolored, but like high definition in there. I think it's going to be pretty wild, actually. Where we end up with that.
Pretty wild. I think that sums it up. The account itself, it's framed in such a way as if to say, this is kind of part of Doctor Who. If you look at it from another direction, it's a sort of a Doctor Who from a parallel world that we could have got. And you think, well, I don't want to necessarily sort of drain away any of the enigma of that. But one of the things that we do on Type 40, because I'm a career creative as well, 30 years in graphic design and print and illustration and all these things, is we do speak to a lot of creatives. We've spoken to people such as the late Chris Akaleus. We've spoken to Jeff Cummins. We've spoken to Darryl Joyce. Lots and lots of people coming from various disciplines too.
Yeah.
And I thought, I have to speak to this person. I had no idea who you were, how old you are, where you were in the world, if you were even on this world. I don't know, because some of this just blows my mind. I am very much a child of the 80s. I wasn't born in the 80s, but I am a child of the 80s. And everything that revolves around, particularly the early part of the 80s, it's very much my sweet spot when it comes to Doctor Who. And one of the most exciting evenings of my life was the 25th of November 1983, when The Five Doctors was broadcast. Yes. As a piece of entertainment, that did and does try to be everything to everyone. J&T and Terrance Dicks, as well as the people on screen, they set themselves a next to impossible task, MJ, I think, in trying to cover so many bases and to please so many people. For the most part, I think it did succeed, but there's always been those little niggles about that 90-minute. And the specific one for me was the fact that when all those characters sort of assemble in the Death Zone, we see most of them get scooped up, don't we, by the obelisk and deposited in the Death Zone to face the various trials. But the one person that we didn't was Susan Foreman, played again by Carol Ann Ford, and one of my favourite characters in the history of the show. And whilst her arrival in the story as a shadow on a wall, it's nicely done, I've still always sort of wondered how she got there, and could we have seen her? If there was a deleted scene somewhere out there in existence. And Terrance Dicks did include it in the book, didn't he? In the novel that was put out famously. It was in shops before it was on television. So I could read this, but that only made it worse, MJ. I desperately wanted to see it. And thanks to you, I think it was last week, about 10 days ago, I did. So you published this image that stopped me. When you're sort of doom scrolling through social media, and something just stops you, your finger stops dead on, and you hold the image where it is, or you scroll back. Did I just see what I think I saw? Because this is what met my eye. This image of yours. Yeah. So describe to me what this is we're looking at.
So this is Susan. The Terrance Dicks actually paints quite a nice view of post-invasion Earth, actually, in that he talks about how it's a greener environment, and there's a lot of parks across London, even though the streets are emptier. There's a bit of life to it, and she's going to the market on market day, and she's got there too early. It's deserted, and that's when she's scooped up. Right, she sees that. How does he describe it? As an otherworldly shape tumbling towards her, or something like that. A triangle. But I quite like the triangle actually here.
So do I.
So, you know, I don't know why I thought about doing that. Sometimes I set myself little challenges, right? And so this one was from just screenshots from a disc and no publicity photos, because she's actually not in it that much.
No.
So I was just wondering what could we get from that? And there you go. But I have to say, I photoshopped the time scoop in. I'm sorry.
But this does feel like an errant piece of a classic, if not seminal piece of Doctor Who history that you have now given to me. This is just for me, MJ. But you've now given
I
to.
can do better. I let this out because
Okay.
I give myself a time limit on these things. I don't want to.
Okay.
There's one or two things that I've really spent too much time on, but some things I'm just like, right, I want to do this in a couple of hours and just get it out there. I want to finish it by 5 o'clock, then I want to go to the pub. And so this was like a time limit, right? Because, if I was to do it again, I'd want a bit more futuristic element in there, maybe something that was very much of the future. Somebody suggested a Sugar Puffs poster. Definitely, I wish I'd thought of that. That can go in there next to me, right?
Well, I notice you've got on the
right.
right, you've got that graphic that appears on the Robomen in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the television version.
I just needed just a little something to bed it into that world. I think one of the reasons why maybe people liked this one is because I think because I've only sort of programmed the model with just screenshots from the 5 Doctors. It's got that sort of blue-grey vibe to it, hasn't it? It looks like it was filmed on a drizzly sort of September in the 80s using old 16mm. And it's got that vibe, I think, from the training data. And so I think it sits quite nicely like that. Yeah.
Sometimes it sincerely does. It fills a gap there that... Obviously, it's sat there for 40 years. I've been able to sleep at night, don't get me wrong. But whenever I watch the story, quite regularly, I've often thought about what her life was like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
the world that she was snatched away from.
You mean in the post-invasion Earth world? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to do. If I've got 100 half-finished projects, but I'd love to do like the full sequence, just like 1 minute of footage, multiple shots. The streets are deserted, so they're quite easy to animate. And I'd love to show her going through like a memorial park with a saucer crashed into it, and walking down to Shepherd's Bush through Lime Grove and things like that. Add loads of detail, and it'd be quite doable at the moment. Just some nice shots, set it to the proper music. It's like I would literally just have to sit down and do it, and I could do it right. But anyway,
I mean, I was curious as to what the limits were to your imagination. It seems like there aren't really any limits to your imagination. The only limits that you really have are to, like everybody else. It's our time. It's our leisure time, isn't it? In between real world pressures and things like that. But I like the fact that you give yourself time limits so this stuff stays energetic and fresh.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes I really throw a lot of material out there, and I look back and I think, well, you know what, you could have spaced this content about. Really, sometimes I throw stuff out in a day, and I'm just like, I could have spent a week posting that. But well, it's just a lot of these interfaces you can do whilst on your phone. I'm sitting at a desktop computer all day, which runs this stuff, so. Yeah. You can in the background run, take 10 minutes in the morning to assemble a little training set and take 3 hours to train the AI on it, and then a little time before the end of the day to run out a couple of pictures. And
when you say to train the AI, is this something that you can set it to do whilst you go off and do the washing up or walk the dog or go for a pint or whatever, and you can come back?
There's a manual degree into it. Sure, it's I literally just did it today. This morning I wanted to train something off screen caps of a DVD, and then you have to crop those screen caps manually most of the time, so it's just the thing that you're trying to train it on. So in the end, you can, as long as you've got more than 20, I usually have about 100 images of say it's Susan, different states of lighting, different states of rotation to the camera, maybe pulling a different face, maybe showing just bits of her outfit, details of the outfit. That can sometimes work. And then I have one process which goes through all of those pictures and sort of tags them in a way that you tag an Instagram post, but for the sort of the things that it reads in the pictures. And then another process builds the LoRa, which is the trained model, on those tagged photos. And then you use that model to, type Susan running away from the camera to get that sort of final image. So it's quite there is a labor intensiveness about it still. I'm sure there's ways to automate it.
See, you explained that, and I was with you up to a point. I was
sorry.
There was a certain point where I was under, and then after a while, it's like, no, I still don't quite get it. It sounds like a spell from a Harry Potter movie or something.
It's more like have you ever used like node-based stuff where it's like wires connecting to nodes and they connect to other nodes like Grasshopper and things like that? It's more that kind of interface, actually. Yeah. So it can get very wiry, and you can look at it and just go, I don't know what any of this means. But if I type something in here and press this button, in about 3 hours, maybe I'll have something.
So it really is. So your involvement in it can be sometimes quite intense and intensive and immersive, and at other times you take a step back, you give it that which it needs to train by, and then you're patient. You let it do it.
Yeah, they're getting more and more complicated. So for instance, at the start of the account, a lot of the imagery was me prompting in Midjourney, literally just using words and iterations to get something that kind of resembled what I imagined. But then over time, you would be able to like reference images in it and then reference characters. But now I've kind of moved away from Midjourney a lot and into like more custom things that are more complicated things. So now, for instance, there was, did you see that picture of the Eighth Doctor and the Tardis, and he was stepping out the Tardis, that picture? Well, that was
funnily enough, I got the impression, not only because it's incredibly creative what you're doing and exciting and new, and with an instinct for the things that the fans didn't know that they wanted. And so I saw this image of a late 90s comic strip by fantastic artist Martin Garati, somebody I've got a lot of respect for.
One of my favourite runs. Yeah, he's amazing.
And I recognised where you'd got it from, what you'd drawn from instantly. And seeing the Doctor there, that's not a collection of pixels and things. That's Paul McGann. That's Doctor Who. I was immediately struck by it because obviously you're informed by Martin's work, but it speaks of the beginning of a story. This is storytelling, something you've managed to tap into here.
I mean, this is, I have to say, this is quite a controversial image for myself, right? Because it is very much based on Martin's work, right? And that Martin's work has actually gone into an AI process, which is then sort of, there's some process images around, right? Which then sort of used his work and textured it and made it kind of maybe 75% of the image that's on the side there. And then the rest of it is like, well, actually, the Paul McGann, that comes from a trained LoRa. There's about 3 or 4 different AIs in that image, you see. So it's also, they're all sort of working together. But I don't know, I expect a bit more backlash, actually, from using sort of legendary comics work. I think if I was trying to charge money for it, they'd be quite right to come after me. Right now, I try and frame everything as it's a tribute and it's a remix and it's out of respect for the original material. And also, as ever with the account, it's a lot of it is about sort of throwing those stories out to a wider audience and changing the format ever so slightly. But sometimes I think people are introduced to these amazing stories by maybe seeing the Twitter account going along. And if that happens, that is great. I do get people saying that they're sort of excited to sort of engage with the stories because they've seen a particular image, and that really is one of the core missions of the account as well. But this one, coming straight from the artwork, I don't know how I feel about it, because I've done some good stuff with it recently, and I feel, I don't know, it's not really my work, is it? It's kind of like, it's like a remix, I suppose. anyway.
But on the other hand, there are people who do feel strongly about AI when it uses other people's artwork or even people's images. You've got actors performing things that they never performed.
Definitely. I think we've already been through a bit of that, haven't we? With when Big Finish started recasting people.
Yes.
And they did it in a very subtle way, in like, oh, mate, it's just somebody narrating and doing an impression, and then suddenly it became, well, it's full cast now with this person. I think that was a good way and a sensitive way to do it, and I like all the recasts as well. This again, this is a very different thing, and again, I'm aware that sometimes this can be a controversial account and a controversial topic. Yeah. So, the only response I've actually had from an actor that I featured their likeness was from Lisa Berman when I did some Benny. And she wasn't negative about it. She didn't explicitly say that it was wicked and cool or whatever. But she didn't immediately fire off letters from the lawyer, which I took as a good sign.
If people haven't initiated court proceedings, then you consider it a good day.
It's going well. This one, these are fun ones, right? With Paul, obviously, Paul was the first person. I've been trying to get a good likeness of Paul ever since the account started. I've been ever since the early days, I've wanted a decent Eighth Doctor, and it's really only in the last 6 or 8 weeks that I think we've been able to do that. So yeah, I'm proud of these ones.
Because although it's great to see new photo shoots taking place with Paul in various outfits from Big Finish, be they the Night of the Doctor costume or his leather jacket with a collar popped, we all love all that sort of stuff. But to see new images of the TV movie version of the Eighth Doctor, it really is something. And again, when you scroll through social media and you see these, anyone would think this was a genuine picture of Paul.
It's funny, that one, isn't it? I laughed out loud when I saw these come out of the machine. Actually, yeah.
So, how many images did it generate in a batch for you to? And if it was to say generate 20, do you say take 5 or 6 and think, okay, I can work with those, or I can let other people, I can publish those because those represent the results I was aiming for, or is the hit rate greater than that?
Depends entirely, I would say, on I don't know, a couple of factors. Sometimes I can post images and it's literally 1 out of 200 generated images. But sometimes, so this sequence of images, because there's a few of them, every single one it got right. It sort of knew, because I just think I'd given it a relatively strong training set on these. It makes me a bit tall sometimes, but it's all the fun of it, really, is just trying to constantly work it out. Sometimes they're very hard, sometimes they're really easy, and it just depends really on how
it's getting the kind of the body language right as well, though.
Yes, definitely. As ever, the technology on any day is the worst it will ever be. So going forward now, I think we definitely have quite a strong likeness. I think the costume is getting there with a little Photoshop afterwards to sort the buttons out sometimes. But now we can see that in quite photorealistic ways. He doesn't hold himself like Paul just yet. But now there's ways to actually train these models on the actual poses that a person pulls as well. So soon we'll be able to include that sort of physical information into it, the way they move and the way they sort of hold their arms and the way that they hold a sonic screwdriver or something. So that's very much in the next iteration of where this is going. Yeah.
Are you a perfectionist, MJ? Is there, or is it just professionalism because this is connected to your day job?
Good question. I have been accused of being a perfectionist in the past, but maybe they've been sarcastic. Sometimes I'm quite sloppy, and quite often I'm quite lazy. So it's more that I just, again, knowing that I've got a crowd of people, that critique me. I've just got an eye for what they're going to look at. For instance, I just noticed actually that picture of the Eighth Doctor riding Ramsay there. He's actually got his little fingers just a little bit too long. I really should have fixed that. There's some things that you can look out for. Some things I will just let it slide and be like, come on. Like when it comes to animation, the way that these things are animated is not quite as there yet as the still image. So I let a lot of imperfections slide on that.
The glee in your voice talking about these things, it does. Hearing you talk about it and laugh about it, it really is quite infectious. Just as the images themselves are your clear love of a particular time in the, if not the series history, then the intellectual properties history. And it does seem to strangely be that time in Doctor Who's lifespan where it wasn't on television. Tell me something about your own fandom, because a lot of the imagery we've seen so far does connect with Big Finish and with these BBC books that were published in the 1990s. So you were a child of the 90s, is that, or at very least came of age in the 90s? How was that?
So I think I actually remember my first ever episode of Doctor Who that I watched live, as in be broadcast, and it was actually the pilot episode, which they gave it a first broadcast in about August 1991 as part of the closure of the Lime Grove studios. So the very first episode of Doctor Who I ever saw was the unbroadcast pilot. And I really feel that has informed a lot of where we've gone with this over the years.
Okay.
So obviously I loved the run of repeats in the early 90s, 92 and 93, the Time Meddler, you are talking about the Mind Robber earlier, even though I must have been 4 or 5, I was definitely enthralled by that black and white material just as much as the rest of it. But also, my granddad, he had UK Gold. So every Sunday I would get the tape. From the omnibus repeats. So for me, it was never off the air in the 90s. They just weren't making new stuff. But, I had a constant supply of the old stuff coming in thick and fast, and the videos and things like that. But yeah, when I started reading the books, probably when I was about 11, I started reading the New Adventures. And then the BBC books as well. I think I might have started reading them first, actually, because they came out a little bit after the TV movie. I read the 8 Doctors when that was released. And then I loved all the stuff where he was trapped on Earth, post the burning. And then after a while, I've got into the New Adventures as well. I found a massive haul of them in a charity shop, and I was reading those for a while in the 2000s. But also, all those early Big Finish stuff, I was buying those when they started, really, from the Genocide Machine onwards. So I've existed in that other universe. It's a great creative time, I think. The comics, I want to shout out to the comics as well. In Doctor Who magazine, those that 8th Doctor run of comics is perfection, I think. So that's why I'm sort of exploring all of these. I've obviously got a massive love for it, but I just would love to show everybody else. And also, I've always wanted to see this stuff. And I just have the tools literally in front of me to enable that. And I'm glad other people enjoy it, because really it is just for me.
We absolutely do enjoy it. Well, this is the thing. I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to do it for yourself and hope other people sort of feel it, that it strikes a note with other people. I mean, I remember the first time, because I've been following your account since it launched, pretty much within a short period of it launching. And the first time I saw people really start to share your stuff around, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this guy. And this is why I thought it was difficult to pin down the kind of person you were, how old you are, and where your exact tastes lay. Because some of the first stuff I saw from you that really got traction was connected to Doctor Who and the Daleks. and Daleks Invasion 2150 AD, specifically those 2 Peter Cushing movies, because I saw images start to appear on my feed. And again, it's just like with the 8th Doctor. You think you've seen every possible picture of Paul McGann in that crushed velvet coat and with the wig that you could possibly see. Then all these new ones turn up, and it was the same with Peter Cushing. I thought, well, I don't remember seeing that. I don't remember seeing that picture before, and I certainly don't remember seeing these before. And I tracked them back to you and all this excitement that's coming off of this account. think, oh, it's so these aren't real, are they? But I wish they were, and I said I now kind of wish that I didn't know that they weren't real, because to me that's Peter Cushing, and that's Doctor Who. More importantly, that's Doctor Who.
He's especially that one on the left, and sometimes I'm surprised about when it comes together. And that one on the left, I was like, wow. Sometimes it really does make me say wow when I see what it comes up with, because there he is. Who doesn't love? I think Doctor Who fans used to be a little bit snooty about the Cushing films, but these days everyone is well into them, and they're very.
People have chilled out. People have chilled out a lot. What I love particularly about the image on the left is the way that Doctor Who is sort of chewing on his upper lip a little bit.
Yeah,
you could.
Yeah, it almost looks like a behind the scenes, and Cushing there, he's thinking about when exactly they're going to finish today. Because
what's for lunch, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Whitstable, he's good for the last train.
yeah. And you even made him move as well. I saw an image of he's running around too. And what's he running from? And who would try and set Doctor Who
that's the
on fire?
Of Campbell. I was trying to anchor some of these into some of those possible films that we never got. And by the way, that no matter the lack of Doctor Who on TV in the 90s, the fact that nobody had the foresight to keep making these Doctor Who films really annoys me. Because they really shouldn't have mattered that the second one wasn't quite as profitable, because they have milked those two films for going on for 60 years now. They just needed just a couple more. The Chase, that would have been great. Something crazy with dinosaurs, we would have enjoyed it.
Just imagine,
I feel we should have got them.
And imagine what his TARDIS would have looked like. You've been doing that as well. You've given us an upgraded TARDIS or two. The several designs you've put out for this. It's all tremendous fun, MJ.
Oh, I've got another TARDIS actually that I tried to get finished to show you today, but I wasn't happy with it. So maybe over Christmas I'll do another TARDIS for everybody. But I want to see a Peter Cushing film. I reckon one day we'll definitely get a Peter Cushing film. I want to see The Chase. I want to see Lloyd Castle in The Chase. There
are so many people that are going to be watching and listening to this. Now, I know they're going to be punching the air. A couple of people who work on Type 40, some of our other hosts, they will be saying, yes, do it. A couple of weeks ago, there was a Star Trek project put out by Otoy. Did you see that? Where they brought basically Captain Kirk, as played by William Shatner, effectively back to life, to have him moving around and things like that. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I caught that, but I wasn't sure whether. I think they did that no AI. I think that was done real-time render and prosthetics and actors. I think there was a lot.
Bit of everything.
A lot of traditional filmmaking in that, and I think that was wicked. I loved it. I'd love to see Doctor Who start to do that.
Through a marriage of those kind of disciplines and crafts and the kind of thing that you're talking about, maybe we could get that third Cushing film.
I mean, it's a definite. It's going to happen. It might be me doing it in 20 years' time. There's so much stuff that's really out there. Once we get to the point where we can train, we can do it all now, right? It's just that it's not come together yet. We can train voices to sound like them. We can, if we get something that is trained on the mannerisms, not just the likeness, that's very possible, and then you can start building stories and giving it scripts, and it'll understand, and it's going to be a very inventive future, I think, for everyone involved in all this. And missing episodes, I'm sure, is the thing that will get done first.
Well, right now there are several tracks, aren't there, of and several projects that are coming at the missing episodes, that material from slightly different places, but the general principle of recreating that which is no longer existing in its original form, recreating that to the best standard we possibly can to represent those stories and to re-plug those gaps. There are several projects out like that at the moment. Just a few days ago, there was a new Cybermen animation, wasn't there? And obviously there's all the work that Ian Levine's doing with his team too. So, and they're all coming from wildly different places in some respects, but the goal, that feeling of righting a wrong, I suppose, of filling a gap that needn't have been there, a gap that the BBC created, but we as fans are trying to fill it with determination, with camaraderie, with expertise, talent, and perseverance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of longing in Doctor Who fandom, isn't there, for things unseen?
Yeah,
as we were saying, right? Yeah, I mean, I've got some. I had a go at some Marco Polo sort of animation concepts a while back.
yeah,
Those were nice. Those were nice little pieces, and I enjoyed doing them. But these days,
different
the game
style,
has totally changed. Yeah, like I think, like for a while, I also thought that it might be easier to sort of adapt like a Big Finish's animation. But these days, I actually think it's easier to go straight in for the photoreal and actually generating stuff that looks pretty much like photorealism. Cinematic photorealism is probably the way to go with it now. And the work all those people are doing are all great. I wasn't sure where that wheel in space came from, actually. Yeah, so I did watch that, and I have to say, it's an amazing feat. But I think it'll be what we could do with it. We could run it through an AI and to make it as like use it as a base to make sort of a very photoreal sort of a version of it down the line. I can already see sort of the way that might be done. Sort of taking a video and then sort of like altering its style and then generating a new video based on that. And then the style is all based on, I don't know, 625 line television to make it look really like it was, actually recorded in the studio. There's a few things like that, actually. And I think that's probably, the way to go with it in that you do a sort of labor intensive base layer, whether that's 3D animation or actually filming people performing the missing episodes in someone's front room and then editing it together and then using it as a base and then using an AI on the top of it to actually sort of make it real.
See, you're talking a very, very big game.
I think it's going to happen. I think the tools are right there.
You're not trying to turn Doctor Who, particularly old Doctor Who or past eras of Doctor Who, into something that they weren't. You want it to have to retain an authenticity about it.
Oh well. I mean, I would do both. I think you can probably do both. I think you can make those reconstructions. There'll be the AI reconstructions. You can make them look exactly like their comparative episodes either side. In fact, you would even train. I would say you'll train an AI on episodes. The existing episodes of the Web of Fear, and then use that model on top of a base layer, which actually already exists. They've already done it, of Web of Fear 3, and you would get a near as perfect Web of Fear 3 out of it. But I would absolutely take old Doctor Who. I would take, the Deadly Assassin and make it absolutely cinematic and epic in every way as well. I think that's, I'm interested to see both.
Because I think the reason why a lot of your imagery hits home the way it does is the intimacy of it, particularly when you put actors that we love in characters that we immediately identify them with, who we've grown up with, into situations where they're in peril, like poor Ace here, played by Sophie Audred. But this is very confined, and it's something that one can imagine being part of a televised Doctor Who story, because it's not some sort of sprawling CGI set of castles like one would see in a Peter Jackson movie. It looks they could have attempted this in the studio.
Yeah, I think always it's me that has the sort of final eye on the compositions of these. For this one, this was actually quite a hard one, and probably I wasn't sure whether to post this because I didn't like the ghosts. I couldn't get the ghosts right. But okay. So, I am sometimes I do sort of consciously pick the one that looks a little bit like what they would have filmed in 1992 or something like that. I think, maybe I do. It depends. Like, I set the tone, like the New Adventures, some of the New Adventures and some of the EDAs, are very epic in their scope. Like the Infinity Doctors, I wanted to make the sort of the spaces within the Gallifrey of that very opulent, very far beyond what we would see in the TV show, So that's sometimes the fun with it. Yeah, I mean, that looks like something they do in the TV show. They run out of money when they got to.
Yeah, I mean the kind of the cracked stone would probably be made out of polystyrene, or
it's I view it more as the new series. I aim for sort of new series vibes of the composition.
a middle ground.
Yeah. The new series, especially the newer series, there's really no limit to what it can show on the TV these days. So yeah. I do. If for instance we're looking at missing episodes, or one time I tried to do the Roundheads, where I was doing versions that look like telesnaps. So I do sometimes. Okay. I do it.
But just little challenges here and there to set yourself to see if you can.
Yeah, depends just to see if I can. Mood, doesn't it? It's so inconsistent.
Well, I never know what's going to come out of your account next. So much so that when I thought, okay, I've got this guy to speak to for however long. What on earth do I ask him about? Where do I? I ask him about this one and that one and that one and that one. But I think the best thing to do really is to sort of to open up the conversation really, and to find out where you're coming from with it, and to see the things that make you the most enthused, rather than for me to pick the things that have sort of made me stop dead in my tracks every single time, because you must get a lot of feedback.
No, not really, actually. I sometimes when the images, sometimes you can tell when there's going to be when it's going to be retweeted and things like that, because you get quite a little bit of nice commentary in the first half hour or something, right? So when they get like 300 likes or whatever, there is a little bit. There's not much of negative commentary as much as there used to be. A year ago, I really would get it in the neck. But that's sort of died away now. Maybe they've given up.
Because the conversation around AI, just as AI itself is evolving, the conversation surrounding AI is also evolving just as speedily, isn't it? So people don't feel quite the way they did about it 12 months ago as they do now. I think people are less afraid of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm any less afraid of it, to be honest with you, because it's all. Yeah, I think people are accepting a little bit more. There's always the shock of the new, isn't it? And people have a knee-jerk reaction to that. I felt the same way when it was first when we first started to talk about it in the studio at work. I was a little dismissive, being like, "Oh well," but probably within a week, I realized that it was something I had to engage with. And yeah, I think I do sometimes get comments, when I was doing stuff that was based on illustration and sort of 2D animation, I think the criticism was at a higher level there than it is now, because now I'm kind of doing stuff that nobody else was really doing, very photorealistic sort of versions of scenes. And, that's not necessarily something there was already a community of people doing. There will be very soon. Sure. So yeah, maybe I was treading on a few less toes these days, I think.
This image of Ace on her super duper time traveling motorbike.
I've always wanted to see that.
Extraordinary.
They're all just things I wanted to see, just like great images that have stuck with me over the years. We're talking 20 years since probably I read the books where this sort of thing happened. But there were great images that have stuck in my imagination ever since. And suddenly we have an outlet to sort of generate this stuff, like.
And the evolution, though, the evolution, MJ, of the characters, the character of Ace, for example, who, to a certain extent, we saw her grow up for 2 or 3 years at least. And a lot of us, because we were watching her grow up, we feel or felt invested in her. And that was kind of cut off here in your imagery, which, it's aligned, it's fastened to books and audios that we read or listened to. We now feel that, this did happen. We just couldn't see it then, but we can see it now. And here's the evolution of Ace into various places that it could have gone, did go, if you're reading the right books or listening to the right audios. It did go there. And here you are making it appear before our very eyes. It's Sophie's seen these.
I couldn't tell you. She definitely did that photo shoot in the 90s, didn't she? So they did make it happen first, which is how I justified doing these images. I was listening to a DVD extra, Blu-ray extra the other day, where she was actually talking about going out somewhere in Shoreditch to do those images. the audience were all laughing. You know the ones I mean.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought at least on the one on the left, I tried not to. I mean, the one on the right pushes about as far as I'm willing to go on that. Yeah, the history of Ace is a funny one, isn't it? I'm not quite sure I'm all good with the way she's ended up in New Who. You know, things got a bit silly in the New Adventures as well, and they killed her in the comics. So
they kept killing Ace, didn't they? Various different ways.
I want to do a bit more Ground Zero, you know, because there's some great stuff in there.
Have you got a list of things? Oh, I want to get round to this and that, and that person, those monsters, all of it. I want it all.
All of it. I want to see. I'd like to see a third Doctor regenerating in dust from interference. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see some. I'd like to see some spare parts with some of the old school Cybermen. Yeah, there's loads of stuff.
Extraordinary. Well, if people haven't been teased enough, I think that to see some of this imagery move is taking it to the next level. Here we can with your showreel that you've put together. This marks your 2.5 years working on the
glorious years.
So yeah, here we are. It's a couple of minutes worth of MJ's incredible Doctor Who Midjourney work. Check it out. Wow. Some of that is absolutely breathtaking. It really is.
Thank you.
When the 8th Doctor is swept away up into the sky like that and starts to sort of turn over. And
do you know which book that's from?
I don't.
That is, I think, from The Dying Days.
Oh, I was about to say The Dying Days as well.
He explodes and he's falling to the ground, and I think he's got like a canister of some of their red smoke or whatever it is, right? Anyway.
I certainly read them well into the introduction of Bernice Summerfield, a character who's got a long history now with the brand, 25 years just at Big Finish alone. And then there's the books and the comic strips. Lisa Bauman's always played her on audio, and in many ways she's Doctor Who royalty.
Yeah,
and yet she's never been.
Yeah,
she's never been on television. Well, not as Benny anyway. She was Kara in Survival, obviously. And again, though, you've recreated an image here in such an evocative way that just honours those stories.
I've never seen them side by side like that. That was. I mean, this is one of the key images. There's a lot of key images that I've always had in mind that I've wanted to do, and some of them I occasionally circle back to every 6 months and have another go. And this has always been one on the mind as well, because it's a great picture by, is it Lee Sullivan? I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that looks like it, right? And yes, so this is a really early trained AI that I did as well. And I think it came out quite nicely. It's not perfect. There's a few things in there, but there's no Photoshop on this. Sometimes I Photoshop them a little bit just to correct little bits in that. But sometimes I make a point of just throwing it out there raw, it really just kind of got the pose too. It wouldn't do a hip flask. I tried desperately to give her the hip flask. It just would not do it.
Well, it's, again, as somebody who only read these books up to a point, I think I've forgotten how much I enjoyed this time in Doctor Who, how much a part of my life it all was, following the evolution of it off television. Because that image there, and Benny's had several looks, but that one in particular, I think is one that has sort of stayed with us somehow on a kind of subliminal level. This is how, even though the audios have been in existence for 25 years, and we see Lisa wearing various things on the covers to those, when somebody says Bernice Summerfield, this is how I always see her.
Yeah, I think she's a great icon, really, because she's very much, I think she's a sort of emblem of that early 90s continuation, isn't it? And that she's a real mark of the future, in that, it could be possible to have a new companion and introduce her into the books, and actually to be a successful companion, and that people really like the character. I think that was really important for the, because there could have been a point in these Doctor Who books where fans really were quite dismissive about new companions and things like that. So I think she's a great icon for the way that it all sort of survived through the 90s, and
because the brand
playing her so well all these years.
Gosh, she's irreplaceable. She's proper Doctor Who royalty. Mm-hmm. Anybody that had got a Doctor Who license in the 90s, some of them were more confined than others. They were permitted to create a new companion there at Virgin, but only after several years of successful publishing of those books and building up a readership, weren't they? And it was the same at Marvel Comics, even though Doctor Who magazine had existed in one form or another by that point for about 12 years. They were still fastened in to the McCoy Doctor for quite a long time. They were allowed to incorporate Bernice into those comic strips, weren't they? Because she was in the books too. So there's a nice synergy there. But it was also tentative, wasn't it? It's as if, even though Doctor Who was off screen, and I think that contributed to us, the fans at the time, because I've got a few years on you. So I was there watching the classic show. It disappeared. I was bereft, MJ. And so every time Doctor Who Monthly, Doctor Who Magazine came out, I would sit there reading Gallifrey Guardian, because there was obviously no internet and things like that. So that single page in the magazine was all we had for any inkling of what was going on. And there was this feeling that, okay, if all of these elements are speaking to one another, things are still cohesive, then the direction of travel is still promising and positive and speaking of progress rather than looking too much backwards, even though UK Gold had started, the VHS tapes had started. Yeah. Another thing that struck me as well at the time about the comic strip was the TARDIS. They were allowed to redesign the TARDIS, which brings us sort of up to date really with something that you published again just a few days ago on December the 4th. And when I saw that, not only did this stop me in my tracks, but several people sent this to me. Have you seen this? Because they know that I love the comic strips, they know I love the TARDIS, and I've always had a fascination again with where the TARDIS could have gone. So you shared this VNA TARDIS, just some quick Midjourney edit. Just throw these out there. You must have known that sad cases like me would be all over this like a rash.
I mean, I certainly was, This is a classic example of I actually regret posting this, because
oh no, I can always edit it.
because they really just were. These are straight out just some little experiments that I was doing. But actually, yeah, they were quite nice. And maybe I should have polished them up a little bit and put a figure in there or a Christmas tree. I thought this would look good with a Christmas tree. And actually,
They are good. Oh, yes, please.
We could have done with it. But,
yes, please.
Yeah.
They are absolutely gorgeous. Because, as I say, I was bereft around this time when the Doctor disappeared from screens. Yeah. And the TARDIS, in particular, at this point, it had been so unloved to the point where we saw it wasn't even just one scene with the TARDIS in the whole of season 26. It was one scene featuring one wall because they'd pretty much struck the rest, hadn't they?
Yes,
over in it's unimaginable now. But over in the comic strip, things did continue, and Lee Sullivan again was given permission to redesign the TARDIS to reimagine it, retool it, rejig it, refine it for the 1990s. And so we got this version of the old girl, which is kind of aligned with the design of the Starship Enterprise around that time on television. A lot of small screen sci-fi is in here somewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of evolution about it, isn't there? I mean, again, I can't take credit for any of those TARDIS images really, because it's this image that is the sort of base layer. So when I say it was quick, it was because artist Lee here has done all the hard work, working it all out and drawing it all up. You know, I just removed the figures and I put it in the Midjourney just to see what would come out. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, exactly that. So, you know, I don't know how I feel about these images, because I don't know, maybe it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable using them as a base layer. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe people can tell me if I'm out of line, I suppose.
Well, it's very game of you to put them out there anyway. I mean, speaking as a fan of the comic strips of the time, as a survivor of the great cancellation that was a cancellation but wasn't a cancellation but was effectively a cancellation in 89, seeing all of this stuff in a way that it could have looked on television with a few quid more maybe, it's just, I can't tell you. This is an itch that I'd forgotten needed to be scratched. I mean, this one looks a bit like, I was saying to a friend of mine, this looks a bit like a club from a Mary J. Blige video in the 90s or something like that.
It's all the reflection, isn't it?
Pearlized. Look to it. I just think it's wonderful. But so you sort of tweaked the same basic composition just to see what you could do with the surfaces, with the textures. Is that how you went about it? Because they're all different but the same.
They're all different but the same, exactly. So using the actual Midjourney within, I don't know how complicated to talk about this, but within Midjourney you can give, say,
MJ, even if I don't understand, which is quite likely because I've got a small brain, very small brain, they will know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I took the illustration, Lee's illustration, and I gave that to Midjourney because you know, a lot of the stuff that I do is based on what I can find in a 5-minute Google image search. The actual copy of that, I think, had a better image than me, in that I actually got it to sort of make the lines a bit more defined in Midjourney first. So first I got it to generate a line illustration based on the line illustration. And then after that, I used that same base image and then I described it. And I would say something like, cinematic still of a science fiction console room. You can actually say TARDIS console room. Midjourney knows what a TARDIS console room is. Really? And I want it sort of warm and feeling relaxed, but warmly lit, with glowing or something like that. And that would be that one. But then through Midjourney, it will give you 5 variations that you can then choose the one that you want to
I didn't know that.
Make a larger version, right? So a lot of these are sort of variations. And there's even, these are just the ones that I kind of liked and they were quite definite. Some of them are a bit out there. You can sort of alter how much it deviates from the base image, from the prompt, how much it sort of like lucidly dreams, makes things weirder. You can sort of alter those parameters. You can get quite specific with it. And then also there's just the way that you describe it in text form as well. That really makes an impact, just the words that you use to describe these things.
Alter the intensity. We've got the Masters version here, sort of.
That's that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I loved that it gave it the 8th Doctor's console almost. That's sort of like the wide sort of plinth it sits on, and it did that without asking. So that's quite funny, isn't it? It works quite nicely.
Somewhere to put a mug of tea, isn't it?
Yeah, or some tools, or sandwiches.
A bowl for the cat. What was the Seventh Doctor's cat called? Wolsey?
Wolsey, well remembered, yeah.
Wolsey, yeah. I'm capable of reading here and there, but no, I did wonder if you've got a list. I've got a list, but I thought if I give him a list, he's probably got a list of his own. Yeah, so, but again, in the TV show, when they wanted to sort of bring the Master in, and if the script called for us to see the Master's TARDIS, all they would do was paint the original set black, near enough. And I love the kind of the old school charm of that, the cheekiness of that. The cheapness of it, I do like that. But obviously, the series couldn't and wouldn't have remained there indefinitely. This probably would have been something near the mark. The differentiation that you're illustrating here with these images would probably be what they would have gone for, something like this. It certainly has been recently, sort of. And I like the fact that it looks like you can reach out and touch some of it as well, and the reflective surfaces and things. So yeah,
real, aren't they? Yeah. These ones especially, they had a real, I don't know, it really got the sort of textures. And yeah, I mean, in that video that we just saw there, I went even further and got a camera in there and pulled out, and it really understood the 3D space. We're getting to the point now where you can actually do image to environment. And that's going to be really interesting, I think, when that happens. And you can give
image to environment.
Yeah, as in it'll make a 3D environment that you'll be able to experience through a computer.
Navigate.
Okay. Yeah, straight off just a singular image. And that really has a lot of implications that I can't wait to get involved in.
So you could potentially create or again recreate an environment, a domain from a Doctor Who story, whether it was on screen or in print or whatever, and we could effectively go there through.
Well, I mean, yeah, in a sort of 3D space, yeah. I mean, you could probably even do. I mean, at some point you'll get virtual reality involved in all this if people are still into that as well, But I'm more interested in doing stuff like, giving it the set designs of the missing episodes. And then that's the missing piece for me on the missing episodes. I think we could do characters quite well now, but the actual environments, we want them to be exactly as they were built in Lime Grove, right? So that's what I would expect. That's what
we will accept nothing more and nothing less.
Yeah. So I mean, people have already modelled those sets as they were in Lime Grove. Yeah. We've got loads of photographic reference. It's just we're probably 6 months away from marrying it all together and then telling. I think you'll be able to maybe even plan camera positions, and things like that. So yeah, this image.
To move around there.
This is an old image.
Yeah, this is your Silurian city, isn't it, from a Virgin New Adventure? Yeah,
this is one of a very early image. Still on a version of MJ about 6 versions ago now. From Blood Heat, great novel.
Yeah, I read this one. I used to have this one by Jim Mortimer. It's a bit of a classic. I think this is seen as a classic there. One of the more beloved, I think, of the NAs.
Yeah. He has actually reimagined that himself, hasn't he? He did like a director's cut, but made a non-Doctor Who version of it. I've not read it. I'd like to get my hands on it. Yeah. I bet it's really good. Yeah.
You learn something new every day. No, I had no idea. So you've got a list that you're working your way down, but I would imagine that stuff keeps getting added to it as soon as you cross a few things off.
I mean, I don't really have a list. I got to be honest. I just go with what I'm inspired by. Usually, there's got to be some kind of challenge involved, or maybe something that I've not tackled before. Is usually so. Like the Susan one's a great example there, and there's other things. There's there's certain stories I've not really scratched the surface.
How about characters?
Yeah, characters. Chameleon. I've never read a book with Chameleon in. I don't think.
I'm being subliminal here. It's just a personal thing, a personal character that I would love to see more of Chameleon. There's so little. I know he started appearing in audios now, but no comic strips, no fan art. I love Chameleon. So yes, if you've got a list, Chameleon, please.
Chameleon, please. Okay, yeah. I'd like to see some Delgado Master. There was a great book ages ago. I'd like to. I'd like to do the 5th Doctor. I'd like to do a nice Fifth Doctor. Actually, I've got a little idea, a couple of ideas I'd like to put them through. Yeah.
You're already speaking my language. I'd
like to see some Tides of Time, and that's what I'd like to see. Spare parts, bit of that. Yeah,
proper vintage comic stuff. Yeah. You have done some Tides of Time stuff, haven't you? You've got this.
Oh
here.
yeah.
It's Sir Justin.
Yeah, Sir Justin. Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Not having a great afternoon.
Another one, but I didn't post it because I wasn't. I did the bit where they're in the roller coaster and they encounter the big.
Oh, the big beast, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I wasn't quite up to standard. I didn't put it through.
Oh, I can only imagine. So I think people. My advice to them would be to keep watching and to keep following Doctor Who, and the Midjourney. Yeah, because it doesn't sound like you're going to be giving up on this anytime soon.
Yeah,
in fact, you sound very enthusiastic.
You don't know what's. I mean, I've certainly got a lot of willing, but the circumstances might change. So it might not be around forever. I'm not going to say anything, but just putting that out there.
So get it while you can, everybody. Is that your advice?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But the future's a little uncertain, I would say. I might have to come up with an alternate plan about how would you go about things. But I won't say anything, right? Enjoy it whilst it's out there.
Yeah. Look, we're approaching Christmas. Christmas is here. Yeah, why not? Christmas is here, MJ. What are your plans for Christmas? Do you put aside all the creativity for as long as you can? Do you put all the projects to one side, go and spend time with friends and family instead? Or are you the kind of creative who can't really stop tinkering and creating?
I definitely would like just to pause for at least a week.
Well,
I've even done
times.
This isn't how I usually operate, but I've done a few that I'm holding back to post over Christmas, so to maybe just to keep it going. But no, I'm gonna power down. What about you? What do you do?
So you're not going to leave us out in the cold here, like the Seventh Doctor.
Well, he's there watching. What is he watching there? Have you ever read The Dying Days? I think he's watching the backstreet adoption of a young girl. Maybe.
Is he?
Is that what happens there?
Christ, that's dark.
It's dark. You never read that story? My lord, that's not even the darkest moment.
From The Dying Day, that the Lance Parkin book, was that Lance Parkin about that?
Yeah, Lance Parkin. That's amazing. That's obviously that's top of my list of things that we've not really done.
Because it's right at that sort of in that dividing area between the Seventh Doctor era, everything off and on screen, and the Eighth Doctor time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the Virgin's last book with the Doctor Who license. I didn't buy it at the time. I remember picking it up in the shop and putting it back on the shelf, and so now that is a mistake that I regret because it's very expensive, isn't it? But no, it's an amazing story. And it's got so many characters in, I'm going to have to train about 20 different AI models just to do a couple of the shots in there.
An army of them. It's funny because hearing you talk about it so confidently and so capably and treating it, I think you seem to have a very playful attitude towards it. Whereas, again, there is still that remnants of suspicion about it. Even though we have AI now built into a lot of our smartphones, it's try our new AI thing. You think, oh, well, it must be okay. It must be safe. There's still that suspicion a lot of people have. I think if we can see people, human beings, kind of master it or do creative, exciting things with it, then it'll hammer home the reality that I feel that AI, I'm a career creative. I don't like the idea that it could potentially do traditional artists out of work, but I also believe you can't undo progress either. I think these things are better off embraced as tools, and I think that time is arriving right now as we speak. I think people's minds are changing. I think that the media is changing too, and there's a marriage happening, and it's going in the right direction. And sincerely, MJ, seeing accounts like yours having so much fun and the stuff getting shared, it's doing its bit, albeit in a small corner, a minority of people, such as the Doctor Who community. I think it does help. I think it counts.
Yeah, I think I mean I definitely see in real time sort of this account changing people's opinions on it. I mean, as I say, I don't begrudge anyone who feels wary of AI advancement in all of our life. Definitely. But yeah, it's definitely a tool that is already a massive part of my daily life in terms of my job. So I mean, it's just there to stay. I can't ignore it, really. And it's this account really, as I say, it's just all about. It's really all about. It's a very personal journey for me, in that it's all about as a learning experience. And I'm just very glad people get something out of it. You know, I don't think I'm at the point where I'm doing anyone out of a job. I'm not getting paid. In fact, actually, this costs a lot of money to do. But you know, but I mean, truthfully, in my day job, I am one of those people who has been deeply affected by AI coming into especially the creative workplace. Yeah. So I had to engage with it. It's because it's right there. It's literally the thing that I do, you know. But I'm glad everyone enjoys this outlet. Well, most people anyway.
Well, yeah. I certainly do. A lot of the people that I know do. Everybody at Type 40 we've been sharing our images around ourselves for a little while and over to our social media group over on Facebook. There's a definite appetite. You know, what are you going to do next? And although I have read some of that kind of resistance, I won't say negativity, I'll say resistance, reactance from people, I think for the most part, people are receiving it in the spirit in which you're offering it. But I was wondering, though, as somebody who clearly has a lot of affection for comics and books and audios and all that kind of thing, are there any social media accounts or the artists' creative accounts which you follow that you think other people should take a look at too? Things that inspire you, either in the same field or wildly different areas. Who do you follow in the Doctor Who sphere?
I follow. I mean, firstly, I just want to say Darryl Joyce. He's been an artist,
friend of the show. Yeah,
yeah, you've had him on. I bet you have. Yeah, he's always been an inspiration to me, and in fact, he's probably a founding inspiration of this account. The more that I think about it, I remember 20 years ago on the internet, maybe finding those amazing paintings he'd done, like reimagining Genesis of the Daleks and in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, and that's definitely one of the seeds of this account. Seeing someone take the existing material and sort of reimagine it in a very sort of cinematic way and break off the sides of the 4:3 screen and make it sort of as it matched our imagination. You know, when we read about it in the Target novels and things. So definitely Darryl. Yeah. Who else do I follow that I really enjoy? Oh, I really enjoy some of the toy photographers. Who is it that I follow on Instagram? Who_photography. I could have guessed.
Yes, I love them too.
Right? He's great. Yeah. I won't hold it up. But definitely, because again, that's all about taking something and just like reimagining it and making it wider. Oh, there's just been a really nice book of Adrian Salmon's art just been out, isn't there? All of his.
I saw that.
I've actually got one of them. I've got a piece from his Big Bang of Rory dragging the what's it called?
The Pandorica?
The Pandorica, that's the right. Yeah, dragging the Pandorica. I've got that one of his, and I hang it very proudly. Yeah. Oh, who are those guys knocking out all those comics? And they do like Paradise Towers comics. I can't remember the name now.
That's Cutaway Comics. That's Gareth again. Comics. Same bloke.
Same bloke, really.
Yeah.
Cutaway Comics. I try and buy as many of those that I can as well. I really love those guys.
Oh, he's going to love you after this.
Hey, but hold on. How can I also forget Lee Binding's artwork, which has defined so much of the last 20 years? And who doesn't love Lee's stuff as well? Obviously, I mean, these are all just names that everybody knows. Sorry, they're not outliers. Anyway,
no, but it just goes to show that we're following the right people, because, as you say, a lot of the things that lead us, particularly the interiors of the limited edition box sets on the booklets and things like that. Looking at the old sets and just giving them a spit and polish and looking at them from a slightly different direction, which we could have done from the screen, but that we may have seen if we were in the studio.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
what he does, which is kind of a cousin of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's all about sort of recontextualizing. You know, there's a great wealth of visual material that we've got to play with, basically, from the last 60 years. And so you can do a lot of creative stuff with it, and people will do. And people will do it in ways that we can't even imagine right now. So, no, that's all very exciting. Yeah, I love it.
Well, carry on having fun. By all means, spam us with as many images as you possibly can or want to, as many that make their way through your quality control department, MJ. And I can't wait to see where you go in 2025. For as long as you stick around, it's fine by us. I think you're definitely winning people over. And all the best for Christmas and the new year. Remind people the name of the accounts over there, because there could be people who don't know about any of this. Where can people find you on social media? So
I am on Instagram and on X as DW_Midjourney. I think I'm on Instagram as DW_Midjourney as well. And I'm on Blue Sky as probably DW Midjourney. I think I've managed to keep it consistent.
There's no fat on that, everybody, is there? I'm thrilled to have been able to speak to you about this. I know you've never given an interview before, have you?
No, it's nice. You know what? Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I when you asked me, I was hesitant and I wondered whether I should. But actually, it's been really nice to talk to somebody about it. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I'd be delighted to have you back at some point in the
I'll
future.
be back. Yes, please.
Get some more questions together, and maybe some questions from you out there as well. So leave us a comment in the usual places, and maybe we can put them to MJ, and he can get back to you with some answers about various pieces that he's done or things that you'd like to see him attempt there through the various processes that he's described on this edition of Type 40 Extra. More Type 40, of course, is out here on the channels, YouTube and Rumble. There's Type 40 Live on Rumble, X, YouTube, and on Facebook. That's our regular live stream magazine show, an absolute riot across Christmas and New Year, hitting you with pop-up editions of the show whenever and however we can about whatever is breaking from out there in the Hooniverse. There's our Blake 7 content, Teleport, a Blake 7 podcast, and Teleport Now Live Blake 7. More of that coming in 2025 too. And if you just want to get us in your ears when you're commuting or doing the school run or simply doing the washing up, head over to our home feed at type40.podbean.com or on all major podcatchers, Audible and Spotify and all those places to get every edition of Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. What a great conversation. Thank you so much for your company, MJ. And as always, we'll see you in the comments.